Hey everybody. Today, with it being Patriots Day, which is what the day was actually named after 9/11 by President George W. Bush, I'm not going to be discussing history as I normally do. I'm going to be doing today a bit of commentary from personal experience and things I've observed and witnessed about this day. Now, this day means a great many things to a great many people. Pardon me. My experience was I was still living in California at the time, and I had a job interview that morning. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from the person I'm supposed to have the job interview with, telling me, hey, I need to cancel our interview today because of what's going on in New York. I'm half asleep. What's going on in New York? I mean, I was woken out of a dead sleep, and he just simply says, turn on your TV. And so I did that, and I think I dropped the phone. Everyone was shocked, for lack of a better word. Pardon me. And what I did was a few minutes later, I called my fiance at the time, and she was driving to work, and I told her to say, hey, this is what's going on. And she hadn't heard either. And she goes, you were dreaming, you were asleep, you're obviously thinking something, just walk it off, you're fine. And I just said, turn on the radio. And she did. And I heard the audible gasp in her voice when she heard about what happened. Now, that situation hit her a little differently than it did me, because for a long time she was a flight attendant. And so that was her industry. And so it's like those were her brothers and sisters in the industry. So it's like that was part of her family as well. And then the way it went from there, in California, in some ways you felt a little detached, but because everything happened back east, we heard about it. But I remember I was staying at my future in-laws' house. I was getting married soon, we were moving. And I was staying in part of their house where, if you look out the south side window, every night you can see a long corridor of airplanes coming in. Those are it's basically the corridor where all the planes come into the San Francisco area. They keep going, and they hang a left if they're going to San Jose, they go straight if they're going to San Francisco, and they hang a right if they're going to Oakland. You can usually set your watch by how many times you see that. I just sat there, I lay there at night and look out the window, and it was weird for a week, unnerving for a week, just seeing nothing in the sky for a week. And I posted a post on this already, but I'll tell it in my own words. My first wife, she was an event coordinator, and we just happened to be in Las Vegas at the time during it. And I'm walking down the street, not having a care in the world, and then I come to the New York hotel, which was, and what didn't make sense to me, I'm thinking, I see all these t-shirts lining the fence of the hotel, and I'm like, okay, there's obviously a story here. So I walk up and I see that each one of those t-shirts is from either a police department or a fire department from all different places in the country, showing their love and support to FDNY and NYPD. I gotta admit, I cried really hard when that's when it finally hit me. Not saying we didn't care out west, myself. It's a sense of detachment, living way out there and hearing about it remotely when it's not happening in your backyard. We're not seeing it happen. So that's when it finally hit me what happened with 9/11. And it goes without saying, our world changed a lot since then. And the war on terror began. What's hard today is I see a great deal of complacency coming toward it now. I see the young I can justify, because they don't fully get it, because they weren't there, they didn't see it, they didn't understand it. It's like when I was a kid, my parents talk about Vietnam, I'd be like, what's that? And you don't live through it, you can't really relate to it. You knew it happened when you were a kid, but that's all you knew. And and so I can forgive the younger generation for not fully grasping how big 9/11 is. What I have a hard time with sometimes is some of the people in my generation, or people who've been older, or people who were teenagers during it, where they become complacent, where they've forgotten what the day is all about. And I saw that more specifically when I happened to work at the airport when I was working with the Transportation Security Administration as a TSO. where you find people, most people were gracious, but you always get those few who were less than gracious, quite angry and quite, sometimes even belligerent. And it just, I'm thinking to myself, and this person's clearly not realizing why we're doing this. Anyway, I'm not with them anymore. I'm speaking in a past tense. I just want to give a shout out to what they do. And also, I want to say a challenge to anyone who might have an issue with what TSA does, with the rules, with the procedures. You know, some people might find them tedious, some people complain about it. Most people are pretty cool, but you get those people who are really fighting against it. To those who are in that bracket, I want to issue a challenge. Rather than looking at it as something that's slowing you down, look at it from a position that this is what's been being done, and what TSA is doing is working. What they've been doing is working. All these things that you're finding inconvenient, that's a reason why what happened 18 years ago today hasn't happened since, because of these frontline people. So I want to issue a challenge to say thank you to a TSO when you get a chance to do that. Consider the fact that their efforts are making it so you can fall asleep on that plane and not worry about it. So I'll leave it at that. So let's just try to remember what the whole point of this day is. It's a day of memory. It's a day of, try to find peace and comfort for the families who went through it. Some people have heard go off on conspiracy theories. They were rampant like crazy after 9/11, which for the next couple of years, I'd be getting my undergrad, I'd be at college, there'd be people handing out literature all over the place, saying it was an inside job or whatever. And it's like, to that, my attitude is, I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories. I don't waste time with them because there's no way really to know one way or the other. Personally, my opinion is that, do I think the government had a hand in it? No, I do not. What I think is just a classic case of the federal government where they don't tell you everything. It's for the sake of national security. They don't just lay all the cards out because they have to keep things under wraps for the sake of national security. They've always done that. I think that's all it really was. So, there's certain things that we'll find out in time. If the conspiracy theories are true, we'll find out in 100 years when the documents are declassified. I personally am actually hoping that I live long enough to see the Pearl Harbor documents declassified, because personally I'm dying to know where in heck those ships were during December 7th, but that's a whole nother story. But just want to say thank you to everyone out there, and just remember why we have this day. So be sure to look after one another. So there you go.